Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Welcome to Wayman Avenue in the city of New Rochelle, in the home of the New Rochelle YMCA. And we're here today to celebrate the use of some COVID CARES Act money that is going to go for a very important purpose and reflective of how we're all trying to respond to the things that have happened because of this pandemic. We're going to be listening in a few seconds to Rosie Finizio, who's a special liaison to our office, County Executive's office. Jennifer Ryan Safsell, longtime friend who's the CEO of the New Rochelle YMCA, will be up here at the microphone, and she's going to introduce the Y members of the family that are here, both locally and elsewhere. And then we're going to be listening to a mother and a nurse, Amasaki, who's actually going to talk about how the program functions for the benefit of her and her children. Let me introduce with us today, we have New York State Senator Shelley Mayer. We have Westchester County Legislator Terryclements is with us today. The aforementioned Rosie Finizio is with our executive team. And as I said, Jennifer will do some of the other introductions as well when she gets a chance. We're also joined here by Michael Brown from our administration, and of course, Catherine Chaffee, our Director of Communications. If I missed anybody, we'll make sure to let you know. Here at the New Rochelle YMCA, we're announcing $1.27 million in CARES Act funding, which is awarded to remote learning centers throughout Westchester County, of which this is one of. This is a recognition of the needs that kids have to have a safe place to be and to learn when they can't be in the school building. And we recognize that school districts across Westchester, and of course across New York State, are dealing with remote learning, whether it's remote learning by itself or part of a hybrid situation where you're in the building sometimes and you're outside of the building. But as you can imagine, it creates a very different learning environment for those of us who went to school and think back all those years ago when we were in elementary school, how difficult it was even in class, and then how difficult it was if you're a parent remembering your children. That is what we're facing now, and parents are facing now because of the pandemic. This program helps kids safely continue their education, and it also helps parents be able to work and to do their jobs, and that's important to the local economy and to maintaining the basic services, because if the parents have to be with their children during the course of the day, then they can't work. And that has the impacts on both the family and the society. The county was able to create this program using the federal funding from the CARES Act. So there's no county tax dollars in this, but we want to thank our federal delegation partners, particularly Congresswoman Nita Lowey, United States Senator Charles Schumer, for their work in helping make sure that this money was available to the county. And when we've had other announcements, those of you who followed other things that we've talked about doing, the work that we're doing to support businesses, the work we're doing to support people with housing issues, eviction issues, in every one of those situations, and this one as well, the CARES Act funding is not being used as any kind of a generic slush fund. It's being used for specific programs that specifically deal with problems that came out of the COVID pandemic. The federal funding lasts through the end of this year. We obviously have been part of a large group of voices that argue for additional federal support next year. And these necessary programs would be funded in 2021 by whatever action the federal government takes going forward. The House of Representatives has passed the HEROES Act. The current United States Senate has not yet moved on it, or may not move on it, and we'll see what the elections bring next week and the construct of the Congress after January 3rd. The funding was awarded for the different locations for remote learning based on applications submitted. Local communities had to tailor it to their local needs. When you look at the county as diverse as we are in Westchester, 2 days ago we were up in Mount Kisco with a volunteer ambulance corps. The density of different communities, the demographic makeups, the needs are different all across the county. And for those of you who cover Westchester County, you know that the image of Westchester as a suburban wealthy county universally, as if we're all in a John Cheever novel, you know, Horses in the Meadow, that doesn't take into account this, the south end of New Rochelle, which looks very much like the New York City border that's just a few miles beyond us into the Bronx. And the needs that are here are very similar to the needs that you have in New York City, and we're trying to address those needs here and address these elsewhere. We did not, as a county government, dictate any particular program requirements beyond making sure that we had complied with the health and safety protocols, the staffing ratios, and the connectivity for online learning. Other than that, we wanted each of the local program hosts to develop the program as they saw fit, given their physical situation, and to go forward. Programs are here in New Rochelle, in Yonkers, in Mount Kisco, Lewisboro, Peekskill, across the board. Some of them are affiliated with school districts, some with municipalities, and some are affiliated with nonprofits. And we're happy that we could put the energy and effort to deal with this. This was not, as of March 1st, something that we identified as being an issue before COVID took off. We had our first case here in New Rochelle, elsewhere in this community, on March 3rd, almost 8 months ago. And at that point in time, having the economy shut down the way it did generated lots of different issues and problems, and the need for this kind of child care became part of that process. There's a host of different agencies that we're involved with. The list has got maybe 15 to 20 different entities on it. In addition to the New Rochelle YMCA, I believe those in the press will have all the organizations in the press release. But I'll just mention that it includes the Boys and Girls Club of Northern Westchester and Mount Kisco, the YMCA here in New Rochelle, and also the YMCA in Rye, up the road about 10 miles. Ossining Union Free School District was able to work out a similar program. Next door in Pelham, Danielle's Helping Hands. Up in Lewisboro, the Parks and Recreation Department was the connection piece. Hudson River Museum in Yonkers, the YMCAs, and other locations as well. So it's been a diverse group of organizations that have helped in being able to set these up. We've been very fortunate on our team to have with us as a liaison a woman whose background is in education, preschool education, and early childhood education, Rosie Finizio. She's a resident right next door at Pelham, and she's been involved in this program elsewhere, and I'd like Rosie to say a few words about her experience in helping get these things off the ground. Rosie?
Good morning. Back in March, when school districts were closed due to the pandemic, county governments were required by the state to submit a plan to ensure that children of healthcare workers and first responders would have access to child care. And as the county executive said, because I have a background in education, he tapped me to work with the Youth Bureau and the Department of Social Services to create a child care program in Westchester that would answer that need. Our first program was at the YWCA in White Plains, and at that time served about 30 children from March until June, enabling our first responders to do their jobs, knowing that their children were being safely cared for. The program was so successful and the demand was so great that the county executive made the decision to continue the program at one of our county parks, that's Ridge Road Park in Hartsdale, as a summer day camp. In September, when most schools made the decision to operate on a hybrid or virtual basis, the county executive recognized the need to expand our program to multiple locations in order to serve as many essential workers' families as possible. Because our initial programs had been successful, we had been able to use what worked to help various organizations and municipalities implement their own programs that are geared towards their communities. All the programs funded by the county comply with health and safety requirements, have sufficient connectivity for remote learning, and strong staff-to-student ratios. It is in this way that we can support Westchester essential workers and provide some peace of mind during this challenging time. And I'd like to thank the county executive for his leadership on this all-important issue and for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this meaningful work. Thank you.
Next, I want to bring up our host, who is the CEO of the New Rochelle YMCA, Jennifer Ryan Safsell. Jennifer has worked in a host of different not-for-profit and other settings over the years. Her leadership in this facility has been dynamic. We previously worked at Hope's Door, and we worked together on some projects there, and I've known her personally for over 20 years in terms of her activity and involvement. And I just want to say before she comes to the microphone, this building is something that I've been involved with long before I was county executive. I represented this portion of New Rochelle in both the state Senate and in the state Assembly. When I was an assemblyman, this building was transferred from the Boys and Girls Clubs to the YMCA, and the YMCA organization had a vision about how this building could be used, and it took state legislation to do that. I was proud to be the sponsor in the Assembly at the time, and I believe Susie Oppenheimer at the time was state senator and was the co-sponsor of it. But that vision is finally something that's becoming tangible under Jennifer's leadership. And as I've said already, I want Jennifer to introduce anybody on her team and in the Y family that she can introduce as part of her comments. Jennifer, thank you for letting us be here with you. We're happy to partner on this. Jennifer Ryan Safsell.
Well, welcome to the New Rochelle YMCA. So, I want to thank first George for his, the county executive for his leadership, and for the elected officials here today, and a lot of them that haven't been here today. I want to specifically say thank you to Rosie Finuzio, who has worked tirelessly since March, making sure that the first responders' families are taken care of so they can take care of all of us. We also want to thank Cynthia Delfino, who is the president and CEO of the Central and Northern Westchester Ys. She has helped us kind of reimagine this Y. A lot of people know that the New Rochelle YMCA has been in New Rochelle for about 125 years. We service New Rochelle, Mount Vernon, Larchmont, and the Bronx. And this is a real community. And this is a place, even though it was hit first, we band together, we looked to reimagine. In the time that we were down, we were able to get the PPP loans from the government and come in and reimagine the Y. Right over here, we have a remote learning hub classroom. We have classrooms upstairs for the children that we've cleaned and updated. And every morning, the kids come through their own entrance and they get their health check and go upstairs. I want to thank people like Tanisha Miller and my staff and the many staff that we have across the county that work day in and day out to add a little normalcy. When the kids sit in front of a computer all day, we get them up, we get them to the gym, we get them to the yoga studio, and we try to give them the exercise that they're missing. And we all know that there's nothing more important to parents than their children. And here they are safe and across the county. And I want to say thank you to our leaders and to all of you and our wonderful board members of the New Rochelle YMCA. Thank you.
I want to recognize and ask for two of our elected officials to say a couple of words. These things happen out of a partnership, and you see government failing to work when we fight amongst each other, the executive and legislative branches, when we fight between different levels of government. We certainly all have our own personal desires to see policy go a certain way, but it's only when we cooperate that we accomplish things. And I think that's what people want to see us do. They want to see us work through our differences and pool resources and accomplish tasks that need to be done in the society. And the work at the federal level that made the CARES Act fund possible is why we're here today in the county involvement, but we couldn't do it as an executive branch without the legislative branch of the county government, and we couldn't do it without our partners in state government. I mentioned just a second ago how the state government was critical at one point in time for this building. So I'd like to ask our state senator, Shelley Mayer, to share a few words. She has been critical in getting state money into this facility for other purposes to help revitalize this and other parts of her district. Senator Mayer.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to the Y and the county. You know, as the chair of the Senate Education Committee, this funding is so critical, as Jennifer said, to the actual daily life of children, and that's what we are committed to. The fact that there is a place that is funded thanks to our federal government, and frankly, the state government did not have the money during the budget to invest in this as we were just dealing with COVID. This is normalcy. This is consistency. This is what children need and also what working parents need. So this is so important. This is, frankly, a commitment that we should make long-term to ensuring our children have what they need to survive this. The state has a constitutional obligation to provide a free common school education to every child. Frankly, given what we're dealing with, we need this as part of meeting that constitutional obligation. So I'm incredibly indebted to our federal partners, particularly Senator Schumer and Congresswoman Lowy, who fought for this money, for the county for making sure it goes out, for the Y for making sure it happens, and for the parents and children who actually benefit day to day. If we see them, we remember why we are in this business. So thank you all for that.
Terryclements is the member of the Westchester County Board of Legislators who represents this area. And when you meet Terry, you'll know that she is an educator by profession. She actually is a teacher over at Columbus Elementary School, which is in the next zone over here in the New Rochelle School District, and she is just a very nice, pleasant person to deal with, except that she is a tiger. And when she decides that she wants to drive money from the county government toward a need in her district, she's absolutely relentless. I have to duck her until I can say yes to her to make sure that she's happy. And in this past budget year, she was insistent that the county government make investments into the New Rochelle YMCA, things that were not done historically here. So we're very grateful to Terry's role as a partner in the county government system as Westchester County Legislator Terryclements.
Thank you, George. Executive, I'll get there. Okay, I'd like to thank the County Executive, George Latimer, who's been very inspirational in putting this together. I'd like to thank Shelley Mayer. Okay. I'd like to thank Shelley Mayer for her partnership with us and working closely, especially since she is the education senator. This program is absolutely amazing. Here at the Y, we have fought to keep the Y going and to partner with the community to make sure that services have gone on during this pandemic. I especially am excited to tell you just how this program is working. One of the students here in the hybrid model goes to my school. She's actually in my classroom. I want you to know this staff is exceptional. They make sure that the student is there. They know her schedule. They support her to make sure she gets on when she's supposed to see me live. They make sure she's doing her asynchronous work that I prepare for her. And they are working very hard with families to make sure that if anybody has a need to come here so that they are workers, yes, there are essential workers, and some of them come under some different titles than you might imagine. We have a child here that may not go, it's not a medical profession the parent is, but they are an essential worker. So I really want to thank our partners in government, the federal, the state, the county, especially George Latimer, for supporting this YMCA. This YMCA is very important here to this community. I want to thank Jennifer Ryan Sassville for her dedication and hard work. And I can't say no to her, and so George can't say no to me. There is definitely a system going on here. So thank you, everybody, for today. And, let's keep the Y going. It's a great program for families and children. Thank you.
And our next speaker, before we go to questions, is Amasaki. She is a mother who's been involved in these programs since March. She started at the Y in White Plains. She sent her daughter to, I guess, meaning county camp, perhaps the Ridge Road camp, and is now here in New Rochelle. Ama is a registered nurse, and she works for the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. So she's certainly on the front lines in dealing with these issues with people that are dealing with the problems during this pandemic. Her daughter is a 4th grader, and she goes to the Khalil Gibran School in Yonkers. So, Ama, if you can share some of your thoughts, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Amasaki. I'm a registered nurse with Hudson Valley DDSO. I do have a 9-year-old daughter, and who is in school in Khalil Gibran. When COVID hit in March, I was really nervous about how I was going to go to work and still take care of my daughter. So this program has been a huge blessing to us. It's a safe place to bring my daughter, and I'm sure other kids of essential workers are also very grateful for this program. I would like to thank County Executive. I would like to thank YMCA and everybody here for making this program possible for us. Thank you.
So as we open it up to questions, I'm going to rely on Rosie and Jennifer in case the question has an operational piece to it that I might not know. I do just want to make 2 very general points. The first general point is that when we see programs like this happen, the real devil is in the details, is in actually putting it together logistically. Those of us who sit at the top of the pyramid who make decisions, yes, I agree, let's use money to do this program. We get disproportionate credit. We deserve, frankly, less credit. more credit to the people that figure out exactly how to create the program, run it, make it accessible for the people who need it. And that is where you really see government in action, not necessarily with just the top-level elected officials, but drilling it down to the people in the private sector, the not-for-profit sector, the people who use the services, and you put these things together, and you actually make them happen. And the second point I want to mention, just to repeat again, there's a lot of discussion in the society of what it means for the federal government to give money to local governments, give money to local organizations, businesses, not-for-profits, individuals. And there's a perception that people think that it's a bailout. It's just throwing money at a problem, and it isn't. What money spent for a program like this does is it allows Ama and people like her to go to work, to maintain her employment in the society, not to give her money, but to give her the possibility of proper child care while she is going out to do her job. And that's an essential part, because if you look at the HEROES Act in Washington, D.C., and, you know, politics is what it is. I've been in it a long time, and I get it. There's two sides and a philosophy and all that. But when you get down to the practical situation, what this pandemic has done in real-world terms is thrown us off normal. We are not in normal right now. You can say whatever you want, you can call it whatever you want. Reality is what it is. So how do we deal as intelligent adults with something that's not normal? What do we do when Ama's child has to go through an educational process? She needs to go through 4th grade and 5th grade and 6th grade. All of that education is needed in order for her to become a functioning person in the society. But at the same time, the mother of that child has to be able to work and has a job, gainfully employed, contributes to the economy. So you figure out how to use money properly and productively to do a program like this. That's the important message of today. And of course, we're very grateful that the YMCA and the other organizations I've mentioned can house the programs and help shape them locally and create them. And this is, you know, for many of you who cover the whole New York City metropolitan area, this is one droplet. This is happening in Long Island. This is happening in northern New Jersey and in Fairfield County, Connecticut as well. But it's important to know that it's happening right here in New Rochelle. So with that, we'll open it up to any questions you may have, and we'll try to answer them if they're in my zone, or I'm going to look with that little boy lost look. I can't answer that one. Can you help me answer that, depending on the question? Tony Aiello.
Senator Mayor, there is a widespread belief that this pandemic is a disaster for struggling families, and that it is taking what had been a gulf and making it a canyon in terms of educational disparities between rich and poor families. When you're back in session next year, what are your priorities to deal with this?
Well, I think we acknowledge that the existing disparities in educational outcomes and in resources existed long before this pandemic, but it has accentuated and made clear to a wider number of people how unfair and unjust our funding mechanism is, and how the outcomes are not, they are disproportionate, particularly in communities of color. So, for example, I have a bill to require broadband for free to every child, every school district, and every school during the duration of the pandemic. It is my view that that's the state's constitutional obligation if people are learning at home. We're going to also look at other sources of revenue to ensure that we can fund and address the disparities in education. So we will have a full agenda, but we are also cognizant of the fact that the state does not have the resources currently, and that is why George's point is so wise, that we need federal help to do the things we are obligated to do. We will look at state revenues, but we will also push our federal partners to do what they should do.
How worried are you that certain kids will kind of never catch up as this drags towards a year?
Every parent and every adult is concerned about every child that needs more than we are giving them currently. Everyone is doing their best, but is it enough? No, we are going to have long-standing challenges. We're going to have to address them.
I just want to add that, so this summer when we had the beginning of the pandemic, we had the only full-day childcare here in New Rochelle. And we also got a grant from BELX and Scholastics to do some Fill the Gap, which was a tutoring to help children in communities like New Rochelle and Mount Vernon. And what it showed us is it gave us a great way of learning how to keep kids safe, because we, thanks to my wonderful staff, didn't have one case of COVID. We did a lot of health checks, and we have a registered nurse on staff. But I had mentioned the room over here that we've created with contributions from Lisa Tadone and her husband, who works for the Y, and other people in the community, so that we can give children during camp the opportunity to kind of fill that gap. And so as George mentioned, and as our legislators have mentioned, it's going to be very important to get the federal government to give localities and state the money for education, so that over the summer, when we hopefully get there, maybe it's safer, maybe it's not, but we'll find a way to work together to make sure children are educated as much as we can.
What's your message to the private sector? Should they just pay whatever higher taxes are imposed, or should they step up and reach out to people like the Y and say how can we help?
So we're very fortunate to have contributions from many of our corporate sponsors. Many of the community leaders have helped us, volunteers at the Y, and we know it's difficult for them as well. But we are hoping those, mostly not just corporations, but private citizens, family foundations, can help in these fundings as well. Thank you.
Other questions? Other of our friends in the media? If there are no other... Amma?
Can you elaborate a little bit more about what this has meant to your family and to your daughter?
Okay, so when COVID hit in March, it was really hard, as everybody knows. I am required to go to work because I'm a registered nurse. I'm an essential worker. I had nowhere to take my daughter. So one of my colleagues at work said, let's Google and see which childcare is available for essential workers. And there was a number I called, and they forwarded the call to Rosie. So I spoke to Rosie. She told me they are trying to organize something for childcare in White Plains, which is YWCA. So my daughter went to YWCA. She went to the summer camp, and she's here for this program. My daughter does hybrid school, so she goes to school Thursday, Fridays. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, she's here with the program. It's been wonderful. It's a safe place. It gives me the peace of mind to kind of focus on my patients. I do have COVID patients currently as I speak to you. So yes, I am really thankful for all of you for making this possible, so that, you know, I can also focus and do what I need to do as a nurse.
And what feedback are you getting from your daughter?
She loves it. She loves it. So she loved the fact that over in YWCA, they had the opportunity to kind of play. They separated the kids so that they could play. They could go outside. They could play at the gym and all that. She likes the interaction with other kids too. Although these kids are not kids from her school, she likes, you know, she comes home, oh, I made a new friend and all that. So she likes it. They provide them with breakfast and lunch, which is also a great, you know, great way to support us parents. Thank you.
Well, we thank you all for your time, and we invite you, obviously, to have any one-on-one interviews with any of the folks here, if that's helpful to you as you file your stories. For those who may be watching at home, if there are any questions, you can communicate through to Catherine Chaffee, communications@westchestergov.com, and we'll be happy to follow up with you. Thank you for coming. Thank you again to the Y for hosting this, and more importantly, thank you for doing the program here.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming. Have a good day.